Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Black Robe podcast. It's your co-host, Anjanae Slaughter, here with my lovely friend, Miss Carol Mitchell. How are you doing, Carol?
I'm doing well, but we have some very serious topics to talk about today.
We do, and I'm smiling through it, but
I
it
know.
is it's just been a real tough couple weeks, honestly, for me personally. I know for a lot of people in Seattle, we have lost a lot of young lives in the last couple of weeks. There's some, and the gun violence. It really boils down to just access to guns. This culture around, pulling for your weapon before de-escalating or trying to resolve it with a, honorable fist fight, right? And then also, I think it has something to do with the decrease in police presence lately. So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today, folks. First want to just send my condolences to any of you guys watching that have experienced a loss in your family or near loved one recently. We got to stand together in these times, but we also need to talk about these really tough issues and see how we can come to the bottom of it. Carol, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like we're doing hard copy or, inside edition, or I don't know, some really, crime focused stories this
Yeah.
week. But it's because that lately there has been this uptick in homicides. And with my prior work in the medical examiner's office, we would see these young, mostly Black and brown men coming in dead, and you would almost think that there was some sort of a gang war going on, some sort of, turf war. In some cases, that was it. But I think not only have there been more homicides in Tacoma this year, I think the stat I saw was 17 already this year, but also more arsons, not as many police officers out there. So the presence of police and whatever effect that might have on criminal behavior, that's down. Supposedly our police departments and sheriff's departments don't know what to do because of House Bill 1310, which I think, well, one could argue about the political motives behind not knowing what to do and where their boundaries and limits are. But the sad part is that it's so many young men.
Right.
Lives cut short, like, in your specific, the personal case of loss in your family.
This was a 25-year-old guy, rest in peace, Anthony Summers. One of my brother cousins, someone that is like, we grew up side by side, we're 9 months apart. This was his best friend. And I didn't have a close relationship with him, but just to see another young man, right, lose his life and his opportunity of life, right? And he was just scratching the surface at his potential, right? And he wasn't the only one. The same weekend, there was 4 other homicides, all from the age of 18 to 35. These are our future leaders. This is the population that the IBJ is trying to engage with. How can we uplift our future leaders if they don't even have the time, the life to really feel their potential, to really step into that leadership role? This is part of our work. We have to do more when it comes to prevention. And Washington State is, amongst one of the leaders when it comes to gun violence prevention. We have a whole Washington Alliance for Gun Violence, right? And we still have work to do, right? So, it's Jesse Johnson, shout out to you, man, for working so hard to get House Bill 1310 passed, because he was a champion for our community with this bill. This bill, and just to refresh you guys, right? This bill was to get rid of the no-knock warrants. This bill was basically to just, put in statute de-escalation. because we need to have it written in law, right, to hold people accountable. At least that's what we thought, and that was the intent. But now we see police departments, confused about how they can even, continue to move on with this new policy, right? And the whole point of the
Yeah.
policy was just to, hey, we're just asking you to de-escalate. We're just asking you, not to resort to violence, right? Not initially. Police officers, you are not the judge, jury, the prosecutor, like the criminal justice system does not lie between your gun and your situation. Like that's not justice, right?
Well, here's what the News Tribune reported just a few weeks ago when House Bill 1310 went into effect, and House Bill 1054. Both of those were sponsored by Representative Jesse Johnson. He's from Federal Way, as many of you know. What they're saying is that even though the intent was to lessen police misconduct and improve accountability, the law enforcement says that the bill restricts when they can use deadly force, and that they can only resort to physical force when there's probable cause to make an arrest or to prevent an escape or protect against imminent threat of harm. They can't use neck restraints anymore and chokeholds, no knock warrants and unleash police dogs. Hey, you cannot do that any longer. Right. And it limits when they can use tear gas and vehicle pursuits. All of those things ultimately meant to save people's lives and prevent unnecessary damage to innocent folks, because innocent people get hurt when you're driving at 900 miles an hour or when you spray tear gas on a crowd of protesters. But what they're saying is, hey, we don't know what we're supposed to do now.
Right, you took away all of our power.
We can't do anything we've been trained to do, and now we're supposed to just talk it through. And that, I think, Representative Johnson, you found his response, right?
Well, I found the AG's response.
Saying. Yeah, the Attorney General's response, because the Attorney General finally had to come out because so many police departments were saying, hey, we don't know what to do, what we can do and what we can't do right now.
Exactly. And really, I mean, all the things that you said, those limitations that, are stated in the bill, these should have been in the initial training. This should have been a last resort method, right? We wouldn't have had to go to this extent if they weren't abusing their power and their authority and their resources, right? So now we're just reining you in just a little bit, right? Now, that was the intent. Of course, I guess they don't understand it, but the AG has come out and said that the Attorney General's office has weighed in to affirm the use of force law demands de-escalation, not abandoning those in mental health crisis. It does not prevent police from responding to any calls, nor prohibit officers from detaining someone deemed an imminent risk, but simply just creates the expectation for all law enforcement to de-escalate and to use reasonable care in order to reduce violence. It goes on and says, as a state, we have invested in de-escalation and the co-responder model for a reason. Officers can still do their job and the community expects them to do their job. The majority of police officers, deputies, and chiefs are committed to doing it right by all people they serve, building on I-9400 and other reforms already in place, so far and so on. New policies that mandate this paradigm shift to de-escalation and less lethal force is basically the direction that Washington has been going, for years now. This is what the attorney, as I'm reading, quoting the Attorney General, I'm interpreting him to say, I mean,
Lakewood has had a co-responder program for years, with a mental health professional that goes out with a designated officer to deal with mental health, what they think are mental health crises. The city of Tacoma has had the program for more than 10 years, I think. It's not new. And Pierce County has had it for the last 5 years almost.
Yeah.
So they know that there is this resource that if we think a person is in some sort of mental health crisis, then we take that person along, or they meet them in the field. Designated crisis responders are another level of mental health professional. They can actually be left to deal with the person once the scene is safe and nobody thinks there's going to be a killing. The designated crisis responder has the authority to handle the matter, and police can go on about their business. That's been going on in Pierce County for years, and listen, very well funded by the state and the county and the city. There's lots of money that goes into that. So I don't understand why all of a sudden there is this confusion about when we should and shouldn't use force. I think what House Bill 1310 is saying, it shouldn't be your default to kill a person.
Right. Exactly.
And what we want you to do, this is the Carol Mitchell
interpretation.
The Carol Mitchell interpretation of the Bible is, when you come into a scene, no matter what is going down, yes, use your training, secure the scene, keep people safe, innocent victims, reduce the possibility of violence toward them. But if that was your child inside the house having a crisis, how would you want that child treated? Well, then that's the way you need to treat me, or my child, or my brother, or my husband, as if you had that same level of care and concern. Your goal should be that everybody walks out alive. Instead, it looks like your goal when you go in, because you want to use all of these things that now are prohibited. It seems like your goal is to kill folks. If you're allowed to do all of that.
Exactly. If you're leaving because now we're asking you to, de-escalate first, and to limit your use of deadly force, or, lethal force, then it's just reflecting that you feel that's where your power lies.
Right.
You can still, there's a law enforcement officer carries a level of respect. There's a level of just, because, hey, this person is enforcing the law, right? They can, if let's take away the lethal force, right? They could still hurt you. They hurt you by incarceration. And we know this so well as Black people. You don't, just being in uniform comes with a level of, power, right? Now, if we start utilizing our community policing practices, right, and actually start building relationships within the community, you wouldn't feel so I don't think that you would feel so worried about entering a situation where de-escalation is the first, priority rather than lethal force, because you've already built that relationship, you're easing the fear a little bit. It's almost like our police officers don't want to do their job if they know they can't rightfully kill someone.
Well, the question now is, what is their job? I think the lack of clarity comes in with police officers, sheriff's department, police departments understanding what is it that the public expects your role to be in community safety. What's your role? Because there are lots of stakeholders and players in the game of community safety. Some get involved before the 911 call. Some get involved, you get involved after the 911 call. Then there are some who get involved in the jail. Others who get involved in the court adjudication process. And then folks who get involved after you come out of that system, right? Post-incarceration. So you're not the only player in the game. You have a specific role, and that role should be to prevent death, dying, and serious harm to anybody, not just the innocent, but to those who are accused.
Right, to let
something.
the justice system that is flawed, we know,
Yes.
but to let it play out, right?
It's
I mean,
not your job to act as judge and jury.
It
Is
really isn't.
to de-escalate, get the thing under control, and transport the person into the next stage of the process.
Yeah. So, I mean, I hope that the statement from the AG's office can offer some clarity for these police departments. If they need, if they need some more clarity on what we're asking, then just ask us, sit down and actually talk to us. That was when we sat down with Corwin Scott and his colleague about Project Peace, and about how the conversations that came out before, there was a huge turnout, right? It was a lot of people came, but the program kind of dissolved and maybe switched to a different direction. Well, hey, maybe we need to have some more conversations. If you guys really want to know what community policing looks like, or what we need, ask us.
Community safety.
Community safety. Exactly. What's the best practices and culturally relevant practices to de-escalate?
Oh, now you're asking for too much.
I know, right? That's way beyond. Now they gotta have a degree to even understand, right? I mean,
they gotta sit through critical race theory, and they think that's too political. No, I mean, they want to do the 8 hours that is required by the academy, and they don't want to hear that word race ever again in their career. Just, I'll do my obligatory 8 hours or whatever they do. Although the Criminal Justice Training Center, the incomparable Ms. Alexander, I think, is now going to be in a leadership role. And so maybe we'll start to see a little bit more focus and integration of, if not critical race theory, then other efforts to increase cultural competency among officers. Today I spoke, I had the privilege of speaking at the Access to Justice Conference, and I was sitting on a panel with 3 amazingly beautiful Indigenous women talking about missing and murdered Indigenous women, talking about the incidences of sexual assault on reservations. And by the way, federal law that says, nobody really has jurisdiction. So people come on reservations and do their deeds and leave. And mostly women who are victims don't have any recourse. I mean, the underlying message was, some of these rules and laws are so steeped in supremacy, racism, sexism, patriarchy, oppression, that you really, as one of them said, she was an abolitionist, you need to just burn it down and start all over again. But at least Representative Johnson didn't burn it all down and say start over. But he refined what the community's expectation is of police officers. The role of police officers is shifting. You've got to stay relevant and in tune with what the community wants you to do. You can't just do what you've always done. It's a different day, a different time.
Yeah, and we need you guys more. We need our law enforcement. We need you guys to do your job, but to do it well, right? To do it from a place of care for your community and not so much punitive, just enforcement, right? I mean, if not, then we're going to continue to lose lives. And I know they're not your sons or your daughters' lives.
But they could be.
Right? And it's still a reflection of how you're taking care of your area. Come on now. I mean, if you look at the numbers, you're not doing a great job. The numbers are down. The crime solving rate in Pierce County is down. It's the second lowest that it's been in I read an article. It said from the News Tribune that it hasn't been this low since 2017, but this is the second lowest that it's ever been. It's at a solve rate of 75%. Before, it was only 66% in 2017. But if we don't address these issues, it's going to continue to decline.
You know, some of that is intentional. Some of it is,
Let's talk now. Now here we get to the talk. We getting real now.
Hey, if they thought last week was a hot topic, they're gonna really like this week. Some
we
of that
can't sugarcoat this topic.
I mean, you have a huge budget in the sheriff's department that's made up of a bunch of vacant positions. And they like to hold vacant positions because what they do is they borrow against that money for other things that they can't get the budget approved for.
Right, them salary savings.
The vacant salary savings. They borrow that and use it for things that, you know, they can't get approved under their normal budget. And I had someone tell me once, well, the reason we like all those vacancies is because when we're recruiting, we can tell people, yeah, we got 32 openings now, and people feel like they have a really good chance of getting a job.
Yeah.
The point is, they never have less than 32 because it's a way to hold budget.
Yeah, the fund's not there really,
and there's so many barriers to trying to recruit people. I had someone who had contacted me from another state when I was in the role of justice services, because they had gone through all the hoops, had been in the military, had been a corrections officer for years in their state, but because of credit score, couldn't get a job in Pierce County. So they they imposed barriers on recruiting more people, especially people of color who historically have been deprived of reasonable interest rates and affordable credit.
Why credit score is factored into their employment?
Yes, Pierce County uses credit score as one of those requirements for getting hired there.
Wow, that's ridiculous.
Now, everybody, critical race theorists or not, most people know the history of how money and credit has historically been used to prevent wealth building in Black communities. I don't even have to talk about that. People know.
That's people know. Exactly.
The banking and financing and loan industry
has access to wealth.
Access
to wealth and information around credit were not circulated through, it wasn't even a conversation for slaves, right? And we gonna trace it back. And, that's not a slave business, right? We wasn't, we weren't informed, educated on these processes. Another way that we're just, having to catch up.
People need to read The Color of Law so that they can understand how our laws actually enforce that kind of institutional racism that prevented people, just like this credit score prevents people from becoming police officers and corrections officers. Or if you smoked weed when you were 16, right? Like, who didn't? Come on, Bill Clinton. You did, right? Well, if you smoked weed when you were 16, I guess you can't. Despite the fact that you were in the Navy for 20 years and retired, so the military let you in, had a secret security clearance, but you can't work for Pierce County.
Exactly. You could have been. You could have been protecting the president, You can protect our country.
You can protect our country. You're good enough for that. But hey, if you smoked weed and your credit score is only 580, I'm sorry, you can't come to work for us. Bottom line is, there's a strategy around that to keep certain people out. And the fewer people that are in, the more they want to be paid, because you could do a public disclosure. I invite anybody who wants to do a public disclosure request for the top 10 salaries for Tacoma or Pierce County police officers. You will be
Ooh.
shocked at how much money they make because they use the overtime system, especially when they're getting close to retirement. They boost their base income by doing all this overtime. So they don't want you to hire any more people because then they can't do all the overtime and then they can't boost their retirement. There's all kinds of scams that get played.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't buy the, hey, we don't have enough officers argument because there's a reason that they keep it that way.
Yeah.
I just want our young men to live. I think that's what Representative Johnson wants.
Right. Not even just men, everyone to be treated fairly. This doesn't have race. Race is not embedded in this bill. It does not say you need to consider, de-escalation whenever approaching a conflict with a Black man. Exactly. It's not even that detailed. It's just, hey, this is how we should operate. De-escalate first and then, proceed from there. But one thing that we do know, so we know how they're using their resources, right? We know how they're strategically, saving vacancies. But we also could see through the conviction data from the state that officers are in the minority communities, that they prioritize their resources to those high crime areas, although they're only high crime because that's where all the resources are at. But then when you look at that fact, and then you look and you see the increase in gun violence in these same areas, you see the increase of deaths, from Black men, young Black men, right? And these are where the police are, like, where's the disconnect? I don't understand. You choose when you want to address, I don't know, you get a call, even though all the resources are in the hood, it still takes 40 minutes to get the police officer there.
I gotta stop just for a minute. Somebody's at my door. Hold on.
I've been recording for.
I'm sorry.
So, no, you're fine, Carol. This is this topic around just gun violence, de-escalation. One, I'm crying for help for the, just. And I don't know if it's a cry for help, honestly. I just really want these police officers to stop playing, ignorant. Don't, just stop playing dumb. Well, you know exactly what we're asking you to do, right? Treat everyone with care, no matter their race, socioeconomic class, where they live, where the call came in from, or even the type of call that you're dealing with. Treat them as if that's your brother, sister, mom, or father, right? Child, even. So that's my cry. That's my cry, my call to action. When it comes to the community aspect of gun violence, I'm calling for all of our young Black men specifically, right? We have to de-escalate as well. We can't just ask the police to de-escalate and not do anything on our end. Because as I mentioned, the police officers, they're not showing up right away. So we have to
trying to figure out what to do now.
We got to take some matters into our own hands, and that's with some healing internally within the community, and this goes to the 20-year-olds, the 18-year-olds, the 25-year-olds, right? 30-year-old. I mean, come on. We cannot be, maybe that's an event the IBJ needs to put on, one against gun violence.
I would love reconciliation work.
Exactly. I would love to see an event where we aren't promoting violence, we're promoting de-escalation. I don't want to promote fighting. I grew up in a household where my mom always said, you warn them twice. You said, don't do that again. Okay, you say it another time, then on the third try. So I'm not promoting fighting either, but definitely not.
Oh, you mean your mama didn't do that, 70 times 7 forgiving them?
No, I grew up to learn to stand up for what's right, to respect others, and treat people how you want to be treated, right? And so we need to go back to those basic principles. Just because guns are accessible, right? We also see that in the data. but the gun sales have
Well,
increased.
that's a whole racket in and of itself. You know,
Uh-huh.
I will have to talk about why it is that guns are so readily available, like drugs are so
Mhm.
readily available in economically deprived communities where cities and counties don't make any real investments in those neighborhoods, but for some reason they put a whole lot of guns and drugs on the street. If we don't think that that's intentional, we need to
Mhm.
rethink. We
Yeah.
need to rethink, because the flow of guns and the flow of drugs is from the top to the bottom.
Mhm.
There's some
Absolutely.
folks at the top involved in that flow.
Yeah.
And
It's
we
all
need to,
intentional.
there's so much money that's made in those industries, just like cannabis.
No.
Wherever there's money to be made, it's highly likely that the people who are the most harmed are not the ones running that industry.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
think about that. The people most harmed are not likely to be the ones calling the shots. So no pun intended on that.
No pun intended. We do have an upbeat note that we like to leave you all with today, and
Yes,
it is, well, not today, but Miss Carol,
not
you're
today,
celebrating
but
a birthday.
starting August 1st, I
The
started
starting
celebrating.
right all month long. Tell us a little bit about your philosophy and your theory behind that.
Well, it started when I turned 40, because, that was so, I thought was going to be so traumatic, that, oh my God, I'm turning 40.
40, oh my God.
And actually, when I went back and I compared my 25-year-old picture to my 40-year-old picture, I said, fine, 40 is fine.
Okay.
25 ain't got nothing on 40.
Give me something to look forward to. I can't wait to see how I'm looking at 40.
Hey, wine gets better with time.
There you go. So we're celebrating life. We are
We're
celebrating
celebrating.
life.
Yeah, for 62 straight days, I am celebrating the miracle that my mama,
Mhm.
without extraordinary, well, she actually did have the benefit of a military hospital by
Mhm.
the time I came around, but gave birth, and I was number 5 out of 9, and she,
Yeah.
that she had the
Absolutely.
energy. I celebrate my mama, I celebrate my father, I celebrate the fact that after a horrific, traumatic year dealing with
Mhm.
foolishness from the county, I'm still
Yeah.
standing.
Absolutely.
And I'm not upbeat every day, because some days I'm crying and upset and
Yeah.
emotional just like anybody else.
Yeah.
But the IBJ just got this big fat grant.
We are sustainable.
Sustainable. And Ann Artman and she's born just a couple of days off from my birthday. There are a couple other young women, I'll call them young, they're in different ages, that we all discovered when we were working at the county that we were all born in August. And
Wow.
so we got together and had one big August baby's birthday. Well, Ann Artman and I are going to do a sister friend's birthday celebration, August
Fun.
15th, 4:30 at the Blue Note out in Lakewood. So you have to call an RSVP. It's on our
Yeah.
Facebook, on my Facebook page. And if you're not one of my friends, then I guess you ain't invited.
And we're sorry. And if by the time you guys see this video, that
It
the
might
party
be
would
over.
the party might be over. But just know that we still need to celebrate life, even with the trauma, the oppression, the hurt that we're enduring, right, on a daily basis. We gotta celebrate the small things. Just making it another year that actually is accomplishment, right?
You have to. That's why I go 62 days. I start
Yeah.
August 1st and I go all the way through. That's been my tradition since, my 40s, because there's no guarantee that I'm going to be on the planet tomorrow vertically.
Yeah.
With COVID raging, There's no guarantee that my mother or you or a friend of ours will
Right.
be here. With gun violence and an uptick in homicides and arsons, listen, we better grab every opportunity we can get to celebrate.
That's
Because
right.
there's just no guarantee about what might happen next. And hey, look, I don't ever want to have another COVID-19 2020 year
No.
where we can't have the beauty of a ritual of a death, a death ritual to process the loss. We can't celebrate the birth of babies anymore.
Right.
It's like, okay, I'm going to put my mask on. I am fully vaccinated, and we're going to social distance, and we're going to celebrate.
Yeah.
I just need that sense of community around me.
There you go. Well, I'll be there. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it, Carol.
Yay.
You deserve it. This past year, you've really, you've made a true impact on my life. And I just want to give back to you, give that love back to you, for you to see potential and vision in me and to really invest in my story and, my accomplishments and goals. I mean, I can't think of a more deserving person this year.
Well, and you're just beginning. You're not
That's
through.
right. Oh no, we just got that grant. This is the start.
This is just the beginning, but you better close this show so you can begin your weekend.
That's right. Well, thank you all for joining us again. Please have those conversations with your families around gun violence and safety. Please, reach out to Jesse Johnson, do some research, reach out to the Attorney General if you guys want to be proactive around House Bill 1310 and really what community is looking for police to do and what their role is as they service us. So,
and if your police department says they don't know what they can do, then you need to show up at your county council and city council meetings. Take your 3 minutes and tell them what you expect them to do. Help give them clarity around what community safety should look like under these new rules. You tell them what you think they should do if they don't know.
Absolutely. And the local level is where they need to hear it. I know we have, the AG and Representative Johnson on a state level, but really we're most impacted directly by our local precincts. So those are the people that need to hear it. Your city needs to hear it. And just quick plug back to the elections, guys. We're through the primaries, but the elections are not over. We're going to have a general election in November, and mayors, they have a lot of control when it comes to police department. You want to make sure you got the right one in your area. So, alrighty, guys. Well, we'll see you next week. Carol, thank you so much again for joining us. You guys have a great
party over here.
Happy birthday. See you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.